The reason I'm asking this question about me as a child or what I was like before crystal meth is that hopefully if someone else uh, is it suspecting a family member of being an addict or maybe trying to put the pieces together as to why they're in addiction, maybe some of what you described could ring a bell and there'll be some parallels. So just, briefly or not briefly, it's up to you. I don't care. Um, what do you remember about me as a child and then, or growing up? And then how about me before I got into crystal meth?
Well, the thing is, when we were growing up, to start with, um, when you were at mom's house, which would be your grandmother, you were with, a bunch of different kids because I had so many siblings. But you and I always seemed to manage to work ourselves away from everybody else so that it was just you and I. And it was fun and funny, and you were smart and you were creative, and we wrote silly songs and we made up silly games, and it was all like fun.
Mhm.
And whenever your parents would be around, you honestly were different.
Mhm.
You were insecure. It seems like you were more like not undecided, but you really were tiptoeing around. And that is interesting in retrospect to think about the two different sides of you from a young age because you were funny and happy and carefree when it was just us, but then get even some other adults like my dad or your dad, even sometimes your mom, and you would be different. You would be quieter. You wouldn't be as outlandish, or funny. And by outlandish, I just mean like the games that we would play, like Wonder Woman and dress up and things like that. So it's interesting to think about that.
Mhm.
Then as you like became more of a teenager, you were still funny, but you also seemed a lot more guarded. And then as you went into adulthood, you had one responsibility after another, and you shouldered all of those responsibilities. You always had a job, you always took care of people. And so, it was just interesting thinking about that progression over this weekend and really trying to delve back into like, what were we like when we were younger? We've always had a great relationship. We've always been, well, to me and you, we've always been very, very funny and we're sarcastic with each other, but we're also usually, we've always been very honest with each other.
Mhm.
And so when I started to notice a change, it was very disconcerting.
Mhm. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I assume, and if you haven't heard my story, if you're listening to this and you haven't heard my story, I would go back to episode 2 and put some of these pieces together. But I would guess that I started to have display a marked change when I came out.
Yes, that would be the beginning.
Mm.
Um, when you came out and you were really just trying to figure things out and where you fit in and what you could do, and you started having like this really like almost grating part of your personality where you were just like, I don't care what anybody thinks of me, and they can all go to hell or whatever. But I knew deep down that that is not what you were feeling. But I kept, I played along with you because again at the time that seemed to be what best served you.
Yeah.
But the change that I noticed was when you had split up with Tommy and you were let go from the law office, and you had like 3 months severance pay. And that's when I really started to see like a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it's important to note too that we didn't exactly even though we lived kind of close, we didn't see each other that much either during that
Mm-hmm.
time, right?
That's right.
So Tommy was the boyfriend that I got right after I came out. And then when we broke up, that's when I discovered crystal meth, and and it was slow at first. Actually, I remember telling you, I don't know if you remember this phone conversation, but I remember calling you and telling you I had done meth. Do you remember
Mm-hmm.
that?
I mean, it vaguely rings a bell. And I remember being like just shocked. I
Yeah.
knew that you know, trying other things. And I just honestly, at the time, I just kind of thought, well, this is something else that he is trying because it seemed like that was a lot of those years after you came out was you just trying different personas on, trying different, just different everything. And so I just thought that maybe this was just like another like try.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you knew then what you know now about crystal meth and what it does to a gay man, how would you have handled that phone call? You would have been different, right?
Oh, it would have been different. I'm not sure how I would have handled it, but I feel like knowing myself and knowing you that after that phone call, I feel like, and I wish that I had gone straight to you and asked you, like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Yes, you've got some, you know, you're a bit freer now, but it also seems like you were even more caged.
Mm,
But also, you know, I just never saw where you took the kids into consideration, whereas before, like every decision you made revolved around them.
yeah.
And so that's what was the most shocking for me is that you changed as a father so much.
Mm, yeah.
So yes, if I could go back, I would go to your house and I would at least try to attempt to have an honest conversation with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I bring that up because if someone's listening to this and they find out, or maybe, their relative, friend, loved one says that they tried it, that they take it very seriously and they understand that from that phone call to you, it only took 3 years for me to become homeless and lose it
Mhm.
all, right?
Yeah.
And especially if it's an older gay man who has given their life to their kids. That's the thing, is in my mind, it was like I finally have I can finally put me first.
Hmm.
This is something that I can do, and I have poured my life into them forever, and now it's my turn.
Right.
For right or wrong, but that's what it was. So losing my job, um, from the law school, and that was way into my addiction. So I had the ability to hide it from you. It seems that, like, um,
Hmm.
because it wasn't long after when I got let go from the law school, was less than a month is when I was arrested the first time.